All right, the Gospel of John, chapter 11. Gospel of John, chapter 11. This is the situation when Jesus resurrected Lazarus from the dead. All right, let me start out by reviewing a little bit of what I was speaking about in the previous message. I'd like to start in verse 3, John chapter 11, verse 3, where it says, "Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick." All right, so they sent him a message. The sisters of Lazarus. Lazarus is sick. This is apparently quite serious. And so they have sent Jesus a message saying, now, the one who you love, and I say that in order to emphasize the opinion that I have, that this is a manipulation. All right? It is a manipulation. It is a form of dishonesty is what it is. And they are trying to obtain an objective. All right? Their objective is for Lazarus to be made well. That's their objective. And whenever someone is being manipulative towards you or towards someone else and you observe this taking place, sometimes it can be helpful to remind yourself or to try to identify, well, just what is the real objective? Most of the time, you'll find that the real objective is sincere. That it's not something that is intentionally destructive, although there are lots of times when the real objective is to be totally destructive, and that's something else. But in this case, it appears that they just want their brother to be made well. That's all. And they know that Jesus can do this. So they send Jesus a message and they cast it in this form, in this style of problem solving technique, that in my opinion is a form of manipulation where they're saying, now, the one whom you love, right? Because when they say it in that way, then they put him in a circumstance, they put him in a situation where he has to comply. He has to do what they want him to do, or, well, there's going to be some revenge, All right, that's what it's going to look like. There's going to be some revenge. And the revenge or the consequences will be that they are going to tell Jesus, now, Jesus, you are not loving. And we're going to let other people know too, that you are not loving because you let our brother die, or you let him go through this sickness longer than he needed to, kind of thing. And so it is a form of extortion that will potentially result in blackmail. It could end up being something like, all right, so our brother died. Now, we're going to let other people know that you are responsible for his death, that you are not loving unless you, and then comes the blackmail that usually will follow from that. I'm not saying that that's what would happen. I'm just saying that this is a general relational style that a lot of people have with others. You might be able to relate to this in your own relationships that you have with other people in some capacity. All right, so, but when they say, the one whom you love, then if Jesus does not go, then his love is going to be called into question in some way. All right, either directly or subtly and indirectly. It's just gonna kind of be there, that Jesus doesn't love as much as he says that he does, or in the way that we think that he does. And so this can be an excuse, that many people can use later and say, we're not going to bother with Jesus. We're going to get on with our lives. There are a lot of things that Jesus is telling us to do that are kind of uncomfortable. Repent, obey. But he's not loving, so we don't have to bother with that anymore. That's what happens. And people look for opportunities like this. They do. They look for opportunities in order to solve the discomfort issues of their life. All right? So this is the scenario that Jesus is confronted with. He's out of town, and he gets this message, and he gets confronted with this kind of a scenario. So what does he do? Well, you need to remember that Jesus has some specific objectives. Okay, and I'm going to speak about God in general, that Jesus is God manifested in the flesh to accomplish a set of objectives. But there is a bigger objective that God has in mind, and it's important to keep that in mind. Now, you can understand what these people have as an objective. They just want their brother to be made well. All right, that's their objective. But God has other objectives. His primary objective, from what I can tell, is that he wants to have a relationship with the people who he created. That appears to be one of his primary objectives, to have a people with whom he has a relationship. Now, this relationship is a relationship that he is wanting to have, that he is willing to have, and he is the one who gets to decide the definition of what this relationship is going to be. All right. For example, you may notice with the covenants that he established. For the most part, the covenant is something that you surrender to. All right. It's not something that you agree to. There is nothing to agree to. There is nothing to negotiate. It's either this is what you're going to enter into a covenant with God over, this is what God says, or, nothing, okay? Now, this is not a good way for us to have a relationship with each other, of course. It's good for us to negotiate things out and for us to work things out and to come to good agreements. And sometimes there is going to be some give and take. But with God, well, he doesn't really need to do that. Right? He's unique in that capacity, although I've encountered a lot of people who want to be God themselves and relate to other people that way and say, this is the way it's going to be, and you will either surrender to it or there will be nothing. There are people who, and there may be some circumstances when that could very well be justified, but God gets to decide, in this case, what kind of relationship he is going to have with people, especially in an eternal context. When people go into his kingdom, into his home, he's the one who's going to make the rules. That's the way it goes. If you don't like the rules, if I may use the proper expression, you can go to hell, or wherever else, all right? But from an eternal point of view, God is the one who will make these rules. He is the one who will establish this definition. And there are some things about this. For example, he wants people to enter in to this covenant with him. He wants people who will have a relationship with him because they want to. Right? Because they want to. And if they don't want to, then again, they can go to hell. All right? But the point is that he wants a people who will want to enter into a relationship with him as he defines it. And if there will not be very many people who will accept that, then so be it. It's better for God to have some than to have none, and he has got a few. He's got a few, relatively speaking, compared to the population of humanity since he got this started. He's gotten a lot of people. I would say he's got plenty. That he is perfectly satisfied with the number of people who have accepted him, who have surrendered to his covenant, who have embraced him, who want to be in a relationship with him because they want to. All right? Now, that is an objective. That is important. Okay, now in this context, we have something known as love. All right? And whenever this word is used, well, you really have to define this word, because just as you look here, I think you can tell that the definition of love is different. for other people. Everyone seems to have their own definition of love, and it's helpful for you to understand what other people think, what other people believe, how other people define what love is. It may not be a good idea to ask them this question because they probably won't want to answer it if they have a definition well established. Most of the time, people do not want to have a definition. They want this to be open-ended so that it can be whatever they want at any given moment. All right, that's normally how people will handle this kind of a situation. No, let's not. I don't really know. Well, I guess you're right. It could be many different things. They will not want it to be defined. All right, because they want it to be open-ended so that, well, it can be used for manipulation and extortion and potential blackmail later is the general way that people will approach it. All right. So you're not going to get very far by asking people, so what do you mean by that when you say that you love me or that I love you? What does that mean? You're not going to get you usually have to have patience. You have to wait and you have to listen and observe. And over an extended period of time, you can normally get a sense for what they think and what they mean and what they would prefer overall. All right, about what that means. But this is a circumstance of a definition of love where the sisters are saying to Jesus, the one whom you love, well, just because Jesus doesn't do what they say doesn't mean he doesn't love. It just means that he loves in a different way. He loves Lazarus. He loves them in a way, well, that they may not like, but that's what he has to offer. Okay? And this is what happens, is that God reveals that he has love to offer. Okay? And this is good for you to be able to study this and observe this and to learn from this and for you to understand a little bit more about how God defines the love that he has to offer. All right? He has to offer the kind of love that, well, there are some times when he'll let you suffer and die. Okay? He will do that. He did that with Lazarus. And yes, I know later he went and resurrected Lazarus, but still, okay, that for him, he still considers this to be an expression of love. All right? And there are a lot of people who will find that unacceptable. All right? That according to their definition, no one should ever suffer. If God can intervene, if he can do something, then he better do it. Oh, yes. Yes, we have a need, and he has ability. And you know how it goes, each according to their ability and each according to their need. God is able, we are needy, and if he does not comply and meet our needs, well, then, all right. And that's how people want to think. They want to believe that way. He does love them. He just loves them in a different way. All right? Now, in this way, he does not comply with the manipulation. That's good. All right? That's an expression of love. I can see that right away. I could see that from the perspective of, well, Martha, Mary, we understand that this is so common in the way that people relate to each other. You probably think that this is normal. Well, it might kind of be. But that doesn't mean that it's good, all right? And so it is a loving act to not comply and for them to be confronted with their manipulative and dishonest approach to solving the problems of life. This can be a loving thing to do, all right? And of course, Mary and Martha probably would not see it this way. Not for a long time, if ever, all right? But from God's point of view, I can see how his refusal to comply could be an expression of love so that they be confronted with this, for them to be aware of this, to maybe make some adjustments and improve the quality of the relationships that they have with other people, especially with Jesus. And that this can be a good thing, and that this can be more important to God than for him to support their distorted view of reality. Absolutely. Okay, so it goes on. That's why it said why it goes on. When in verse 4, when Jesus heard that, he said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." All right, now he doesn't say exactly how and in what ways, but I just gave you an example of some good positive things that could result the glorification of God, the glory of God, the better understanding of the relationship he's willing to have with people can be shown through this if people will see it. All right? I mean, what is he thinking? Is he thinking this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God? Is he thinking, I want Lazarus to suffer all the way, and die, and be buried in the tomb for 3 days, and I want you all to grieve and all to suffer so that I can be glorified. Is that? No, that's not what he's thinking. I can't imagine that would be what he's thinking. I know that this is probably the most common way that it's presented, don't worry, God is going to resurrect Lazarus from the dead. He's going to show a resurrection, and that's worth it. Okay, this is a chance to see the glory of God. Well, all right. From a certain point of view, I can say that could be. Okay, I just don't think so. All right. So I will say what other people feel and what other people have said. I'm sure you've heard this by just about everyone. I'm just a little different in this respect. I don't think that's what he had in mind. I think that God could be glorified, would be shown that he's not going to give in to manipulations, that there is a better understanding of the love of God, all right? That there is a better understanding of what God wants to do in our lives and how he wants to participate in our lives. For example, instead of preventing the sufferings of life, he would like to walk through the sufferings of life with us, to help us learn how to navigate through the sufferings and the difficulties of life. That this is more important than just protecting us and helping us from all the sufferings and difficulties of life. All right, something that you might be able to relate to is a parent and child relationship, which I prefer to avoid when I speak about the way that God relates to us, because there are probably more differences than similarities. All right, but in this case, there may be something that you could perhaps relate to and understand a little bit when you observe a parent who has a child and the parent protects them from all the sufferings of life. The child does something wrong or encounters something, and the parent comes in and just solves all the problems for them. All right, you probably will notice that eventually the parent is going to be gone. Just because of age, the parent will die before the child. Will the child then have the skills to be able to navigate through the problems of life on their own? Or are they going to encounter something and say, oh gosh, I wish, I wish that my mother was still alive or my father was still alive so that they can solve the problems that I am having like they've always done. All right, this is a common issue. And that's not the way life is going to be. All right, it's just not going to work out that way very well. And so one of the important roles that a parent has in many circumstances is to allow their children to suffer from their decisions, from the child's decisions, and from other people's decisions whom the child will have to endure and work through, that other people will make decisions that will cause discomfort in their lives. And they're going to have to figure out, they're going to have to know, and they're going to have to learn how to work through those things on their own. Okay? We have a God who will not solve every problem of life that we have, if you haven't noticed. Okay? He's not going to do that. He will walk through these problems with us. He will go through the sufferings with us. He will navigate. Of course, there are times when he will intervene and do something. I don't want to say that he won't. All right? I am confident that he does. Still today, I can think of some examples that I think the evidence is quite overwhelming to say that he's done this just in my own life. All right? I just hesitate sometimes because I don't want to say that he did something when maybe he didn't. Okay? I don't want to do that. But what's important to understand is that this is an expression of love. It really is. And what most people don't get, all right, they don't see, is that what happens is that when you get to the other side of this situation, these situations, whatever they may be, when you get to the other side of these, there can be lots of opportunities for you to increase in the quality of the relationship between you and God. You're going to see later Jesus and Lazarus sitting down, having dinner together. You know, the relationship between him and Lazarus and Martha and Mary was probably a lot different and a lot better than what it would have been if Jesus would have just got the message and just rushed down there and helped Lazarus before he died. You know, the relationship was different. And I'm willing to say that it was much better than what it would have been otherwise. All right, so we have in verse 4 again, Jesus heard that. He said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, and that the Son of God may be glorified through it." And yes, I can see that, from a certain perspective, that the resurrection could qualify in this respect. But I'm proposing that there is so much more. All right, there's so much more that can be understood and seen as the glory of God. All right, that God was glorified in so many other ways besides just him resurrecting Lazarus. Verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. That's verse 5. He did. Okay, he did. So in verse 3, they say, the one whom you love. Verse 5, he did. He did love them. He loved them in a way that was a little different than what they wanted, than what they expected. Okay? Now, in the end, we know this worked out okay. Even though he didn't love in the way that they wanted, it still worked out. The relationship survived, okay? And it was probably much better afterwards. And I don't think that Jesus would have started that kind of a conversation with, well, I wanted to resurrect Lazarus, and so that was the way that I loved you, okay? I don't think that that's what he said. I really don't. Verse 6, so when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. And like I said, this is an expression of love by saying we're not going to have that kind of relationship with each other. We're not going to do that. I'm going to stay here for 2 more days, and we'll talk about this later. Right? Verse 7, then after this he said to the disciples, this is good. After 2 days, he says to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. All right, so now we have a relational experience between him and the disciples. Okay, there are two different groups of relationships here. You have the relationship between Jesus and the people at the home of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. And then the second set of relationships has to do with his relationships between himself and the disciples. Okay, and what you're going to see, what's coming, I just have to tell you what's coming. What you're going to see is that he's got these two groups of relationships. And they get to be so bad, all right? They get to be so bad where he comes to the point where it is completely obvious that he does not have the kind of relationship that he wants with the people who are local to Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, and he doesn't have the relationship that he really wants between himself and his disciples. And so what happens is that Jesus is alone with all of these people, all right? And the recognition that the kind of relationship he has with all these people is not what he wants, the recognition of that results in such emotional turmoil that he cries. All right? That's what you're going to see. I find that to be very profound. All right, so going back to verse 8. In verse 7, he says, let's go to Judea again. Right? And you might be wondering, well, all right, so what's the big deal? Well, verse 8, the disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you. Are you going there again? All right. Jesus says, let's go to Judea. He says, now, Rabbi, last time you were there, everybody, or, the majority, or a lot of people, were really wanting to throw rocks at you until you were dead, all right? And we got out of there. We escaped. Are you really thinking about going back there? Are you going there again? Why not just spend the rest of your life away from Judea? Let's just not go there anymore. All right, let's be done with that. Your life is at risk here, isn't it? And then you see later they say, our lives are at risk too. Okay, but they start with, now Jesus, maybe you should rethink this. Really, they really want, these people, they really want to murder you. They really do. For your sake. All right, for your sake. You're such a good person. We like you. We love you, okay? Maybe you should rethink this. Are you really? Are you, maybe you misspoke. Maybe you misunderstand the situation. Maybe you just don't have it right. So we're giving you an opportunity to correct this misunderstanding that we have. We think you said you want to go back to Judea. What does he say? Jesus answered, verse 9. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. These things he said, and after that he said to them, let's come back to that in just a second. I want you to see his response, his answer. Well, as long as we go during daylight, we'll be fine. Right. You see, if we go at night, well, that's dangerous. If we try to sneak into Judea at night, when nobody's around, nobody can see, we might stumble, we might have a problem. So let's go in. All right, let's go in during the daytime, let's all be together, let's have a good crowd, let's make a real event out of it in a sense. All right, so they say, now, are you sure you want to go? These people want us. Don't worry, as long as we go when they can see us. All right, so you can see the interchange of him relating to them and saying, hey, don't worry, as long as we go when they can see us. And that exaggerates the point. Yes, we're going to go to Judea with all those people who want to murder me. Yes, we are. That's what we're going to do. Absolutely. There is no confusion about what I said. All right? Yes, I am sure. I am. No confusion here. This is what I'm going to do. Then he goes on in verse 11. These things he said. And after that, right? After that, you notice it doesn't appear that they had anything to say after that one. What are they going to say? They asked him, are you sure? He said, oh, yes. Yes, and, we're not going to sneak about it. We're not going to be sneaky about it at all, right? What are they going to say? Well, they were probably in shock. They might have been stunned. So he politely continued in order to hide their apparent disorientation that could very well have been present. He said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. All right, so what he says is that, yes, I am going to go and risk my life to the maximum because Lazarus is sleeping. And I'm just going to go and wake him up. This doesn't sound like, the reward is worth the risk here. All right? I mean, it doesn't sound like this is a good thing to do, that this is worth the effort. His disciples respond. They say, hey, look, if he's sleeping, he's going to wake up on his own. We don't need to do this. All right? In desperation to try to keep him from going. Then his disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest and sleep. So, verse 14, then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead. He's dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. What does that mean? That means I was hoping that you would believe. But even though you don't, let's go anyway. All right? Nevertheless, I was hoping that maybe you believe, or maybe there would be an improvement between yourself and I. Maybe there would be an increase in the quality of the relationship between us. All right? Maybe a little bit more trust. Maybe a little bit more confidence. All right? Nevertheless, all right, if we don't have that, and that's what I want you to see. Nevertheless, let's go. All right? You don't have confidence in me. You don't have trust in me. All right? Let's just put it out there. That's the way things are. Nevertheless, let's go. All right? And this is not a manipulation. It's not like, well, now if you trust me, you'll go. All right? It's not like that. Okay? This is different. This is a little different. This is not a manipulation. All right? And he says, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Okay? Don't worry. We go and you will believe and you will believe more. It's not a way of Jesus saying, I don't think you believe, and so I'm going to put you through this test, and you better go with me into Judea, among all these people who want to throw rocks at me until we are dead. All right, I'm going to test you, if you believe, right? Just like Martha and Mary would say, if you love, Jesus is not doing that. He's not saying, if you believe, he's not saying that. He's saying that you may believe, more, okay? That there may be more, maybe. Nevertheless, let's go. Whether there is or there isn't, let's go. That is different from, well, now, if you believe, you'll go. It's different. Can you see the difference? This is better. All right? This is more appropriate. This is different from what they were doing to him, what the sisters were doing to him. All right? He's not doing a manipulation on his disciples. He's giving them an invitation so that they may have an increase in the quality of their life. And if they do, good. And if they don't, that's fine too. He's not going to extort or blackmail. He's not going to do that. So there is a profound difference between verse 3 and verse 14 here. Profound difference in terms of how people relate to one another, in terms of the kind of relationship that our God wants to have with people. A profound difference. Verse 15 says, "And I'm glad for your sake that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him." All right. Now, obviously, they are out of options, okay? They tried to give him a way out, right? They said, "Now, we're not sure we understood you correctly." We're not sure we understood you right. Are you really thinking, are you really saying, we're going to give you a chance to make a correction to what we think you heard, what we think you said, what we heard, all right? We're going to give you a chance to make a correction to that. Oh, no, that's exactly what I said. That's what I meant. All right, now, obviously, now, with what he has said, he has given them an invitation to go with him and to perhaps have an increase in belief in him. It is an invitation. All right? There's no condemnation if they refuse. If they don't want to have an increase in belief, there you go. Fine. Let it be. All right? If they don't want to have an increase in faith, so be it. So what are they going to do now? All right, they are now in potentially an impossible scenario. If he goes on without them, if they don't go with him, that could be an exit from the relationship. You know, it could be. They're going to lose touch with him. Where's he going to be at? You know, where are they going to rendezvous? Are they ever going to see him again? What happens if he dies? What happens if he needs help? You know, I mean, if they don't go, then this could be potentially an exit from the relationship, just like what happened earlier in his ministry previously when there were many disciples who walked with him no more. Is this what they're going to do? You know, they have a way out. Okay, so what is going to be the response? Well, Thomas gives a response. His response is sarcasm, right? And sarcasm has a very important place in relationships. It's often a form of contempt, which is not good, all right? When you start hearing sarcasm coming out of people with whom you are having a relationship with, it might be an expression of contempt. But a better way to think of it when you're hearing it from somebody else is that they are stating to you that at the moment they see an impossible situation that's going to end badly, and they are concerned. All right? And sarcasm is often described, I often describe it as a last attempt to overcome an impossible situation. Sarcasm is the last attempt or the last defense to what is an impossible situation that is going to end badly. All right? That it's all you've got left is to be sarcastic. Okay? And that's what I see here. I see that Thomas, you know, he's seen an impossible situation that is going to end badly. And he says so in verse 16. Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." All right? Let's go, that we can die too. All right? Which is a way of saying, this is impossible. There's no way out of this. All right? He's going to go get himself killed. This is going to end badly. And obviously there's no way to overcome this. And so let's just say it the way it is. Let's go and die with him. All right. Let's just go and die with him. All right. And the contempt behind that is, Jesus, you're making a bad decision. You are. We know it. We know that's what we think. You're making a bad decision here. This is not going to end well. All right. And we we're expressing our contempt towards this decision that you are making. Let us go. Now, first of all, they are not necessarily at risk directly. Okay, the people who wanted to murder Jesus, they just wanted to murder Jesus. We don't have any indication that they really wanted to murder the disciples too. The disciples would be, in this case, collateral damage. All right, they would be collateral damage. It's similar to when Jesus was at the temple previously in the previous chapter during the Feast of Dedication, and everybody started picking up rocks. Come on, guy. I mean, how's your aim? I mean, are you really good with a rock? How many murders have you committed? How many people have you killed? All right, you throw that thing, and we're on the other side of Jesus. You're going to hit us. All right, there's going to be some collateral damage. All right, and so the disciples also can see that there is potential that one of the rocks that's thrown at Jesus might hit them by mistake, by accident, by an unintended consequence. And so to say, let us go that we can die with him, that is a way of saying there is great risk for us that we're going to be killed along with you. We're going to die as collateral damage. But, in general, they can find a way out. They can just step aside and say, we're not here for this. Okay, Jesus might be here for this, but we're not here for this. And they could very well have escaped a potential murder that could occur. It's potential. There's great opportunity for them to survive that kind of an event. But this is a last defense to what appears to be an impossible situation. And what is Thomas's objective by expressing this, really? Is it really an objective of he just wants to say that Jesus is a total loser? Is that really what his intent is? No, it's not. It's not. It's his way of saying, this is a bad idea, all right? And I care. And I don't want you to suffer like this. His objective is to keep Jesus from being murdered. That's his objective. It may not be so obvious, but I think that is what is really on his mind, and that it's not about his own personal self-protection, because he is going to go, all right? He does go and put his life at risk because he does want to have a relationship with Jesus. He really does. Okay, so that's where I'm going to pause here at this section in verse 16. That's the Gospel of John, chapter 11, verses 7 through 16. I have a question for those of you who are using this for your small groups. Have you ever asked God to do something and he didn't do it? All right, I think it's a great question to ask. People don't normally want to talk about this, but have you ever asked God to do something and he didn't do it? He didn't do what you asked. Has that? Probably it has. All right, and the intent behind this question is for you to maybe revisit some of these things now that those things are long past. All right, maybe not pick something that's so recent. But now that those things are long past, maybe there are some things that you could share about what you've learned, about what you've discovered, about that situation that you asked him to participate in, to intervene in, and he didn't. Well, what were some of the good things that resulted from his not answering your prayer or from his not doing what you asked of him? And that there can be an opportunity for growth and encouragement through that. All right? So that's the question I got for you to consider. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this time that we could spend to review what took place between you and the disciples here in John chapter 11. And Lord, I do pray that through this, that we will grow to know you more. And I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.